Welcome everyone to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Habitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong, strategic, national security-oriented policies. Our movement consists of more than 20,000 people here in Israel, including many reserve officers and operators from all branches of the Israel Defense Establishment, who believe that strong national security and staunch Zionism are necessary for Israel to be the eternal homeland of the Jewish people. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into these war briefings. It is so important to us that we are able to share these updates and analysis with you. I'm joined today by Lieutenant Colonel Yaron Buskila, as well as Tirel Hacohen, founder of the Kedma Student Villages. And we'll begin with Lieutenant Colonel Buskila, who is no stranger to our briefings in the past. You've seen him in uniform at the base or in the car, and it's a privilege to have him be able to join us in his civilian clothing. So Yaron, what can you share with us about that's happening in Gaza right now?
Okay, hi, hello everyone. You catch me without a uniform right now. I just came for a couple of hours home, and I'm going to back in 2 hours from now. I'm back to my military base. So since Moshe let me know that you're following all of the details and you are well known about what's happening, almost like the chief of the staff. So I would just give you a short brief about what's going on right now. So I believe that you know that we are focusing right now in the north area of Gaza and in the south area of Gaza. As you probably know, the Gaza Strip, we have a couple of cities inside the Gaza Strip, Gaza in the north, Rafiah in the south, and we have the Deir el-Balach in the center, and Khan Yunis between Deir el-Balach to Rafiah. But as we know, much of their leaders actually escape when we open them the opportunity to go south, the corridor to go south. Most of their leaders, the leader of the Hamas, escape south, and actually most of them actually right now hiding deep in the underground in the tunnels in the area of Khan Yunis. As well, there have a lot of terror position, and some of them are still in the north. So we are, as I said, we are focusing in the north and in the south. At the same time, we're trying to build again all of the fence that surround Gaza and make the society, our civilians that left the villages that was located around the Gaza Strip, go back home. When we give them we will announce and tell them that they can back. But first, we're going to start with the villages that are starting from 4 kilometers to 7 kilometers. And by the time, if we will see and feel that the security situation is better, that we will open the opportunity to those that lived in the villages that close to the fence to come back home. Same time, we are destroying and exploding all of the tunnels as much as we can. We are finding a lot of tunnels, more than we even realize that they're in Gaza, and we're talking about hundred of kilometers of tunnels underground. Some of them are very, very, very massive. When you say massive, we're talking about cars that was driving underground, cars, motorcycles. So we're talking about a huge tunnels. Because we know that they use them for terror and to come close to our forces and to try to surprise our forces and to shoot and to attack them. So we're trying to expose as much as we can and not leave tunnels behind after we will finish this war. We are planning as soon as possible to ask all of those soldiers that in reserve to go back and to finish their service, but still to stay with some of them and with the soldiers that are still in the active duty. We're planning to live, I don't want to say how much, but a couple of divisions still in Gaza and keep them work and and try to find those leaders and to kill them, and of course to bring our hostages back home and not to leave Gaza until we will find all of our hostages and bring them home. Unfortunately, we know that some of them already died and we need to bring their bodies back home, and some of them are still alive. We're trying to find a solution to the south border. As you probably know, the border between Gaza to Egypt is going all along the Rafah. So there's actually a border between Egypt to Rafah, and we don't want them to steal, smuggle weapons, and even, I don't know, trying to take maybe the hostages and to move them from Gaza to Egypt, to Sinai, and from them, you just can imagine where. So we want to block this way underground and up off the ground. So we're trying to find a solution for that. There are a couple of ideas, but in the end of the day, we will decide the best idea that they can block for 100% the way from Gaza out. So we control and manage the people that are going inside and outside of Gaza. During we are fighting inside. And the last thing before I give you just the option to ask question, as you probably heard in the news, those terrorists by the time almost every day killing a soldier, sometimes one soldier, two soldier or more. The Hamas using right now, they start to change. If we start this war, while is trying to use ordinary defense, right now using a guerrilla, and by using this guerrilla, is just popping out from ground, shooting this anti-tank rocket, or using a sniper, and then going back to the tunnel very, very deep inside the tunnel. So from one hand, this is you have the option to surprise us, and some of the time to hit our vehicles and to kill our soldiers, unfortunately. But on the other hand, once we're finding this tunnel muzzle, it's very easy to eliminate the tunnel by many material that we use. There is a lot of option to eliminate and to eradicate this tunnel, and most of those terrorists dying inside the tunnel. Now, if you have any question, I will.
Yaron, thank you so much for this briefing. We've had a number of guests in the past, including General Avivi, who have noted that the war in Gaza would kind of have two stages. The first is the major heavy operations, and then this prolonged period of kind of purifying Gaza and cleaning it up. What is the point of demarcation when we end kind of that first stage of the heavy fighting in the war and move into the second stage? Are we close to that right now, or is there a lot more heavy fighting to be done?
Well, the first part of the war, the goal of the first part of the war was to destroy and to not let the Hamas the option to be the main regime inside Gaza. So right now, actually, they're not controlling the civilians. They not have any option still to control the civilians. So because they're underground, and we are those who control right now everything that's going inside, most of the things that's going inside Gaza. Even when they're getting food supply, we're giving it to UNRWA, and UNRWA give it to the civilians. I mean, there is some of the time they're trying to getting over this to control these trucks and to take the food and to be the ones that giving the food, because if they have the food, they have the power. They're deciding who's gonna get food and who's not. But we're trying to do our best not to give them this opportunity. Even we attacked some of the time some of the Hamas terrorists that took these trucks or tried to take this food to themselves. And so we're still working with UNRWA. I'm not saying that UNRWA is a good organization that is no, UNRWA, 99% of the people that working in UNRWA belong to the Hamas. But we made an agreement with the UN that they will be the ones that giving the food. But the second part of this of the war is focusing by eliminate the leader underground. We don't need too much forces after we destroy all of their position, after we got control of all of the Gaza Strip. We don't need all of these forces to be inside to eliminate all of the Hamas. We need a special unit, special forces that still will be there. And this is a specific work that we need to do with a specific units that know how to do that. And it will take time. I believe that it will take 1 or 2 years until we will make sure the Hamas will not be exist anymore.
Thank you. One more question before we go to our next guest. We know Sunday night there was a barrage of rockets out of Gaza trying to hit Tel Aviv and the other areas in central Israel. So one of our viewers asked me a question right before the briefing. At what point will that stop? Is the stopping Hamas's capacity to send rockets, is that a major operational priority right now, or are there more pressing things in this war?
Well, I don't think that we're gonna stop it. I mean, I don't think that there will be a point that we say the war was over. We will keep this war, but with but in a low, without the same amount of soldier as we started. As I said, we don't need all of that. But I think this is my opportunity, my opinion, that we cannot let those civilians of the terrorists, I mean the Arabic, the Palestinian civilians inside Gaza go back to the north before we make sure that there is no threats against our civilians, so they can go back home. I mean, even for a moral place, I mean, we cannot let them go back before our civilians can going back. We need to make sure that our civilian can go back and they are safe, and there are no threats of rockets and no threats of anti-tank rockets against their vehicles. And of course, there are no tunnels, there are no chance for attacking them, and the same that they did before October 7, and maybe then to let them go back to the north. But unfortunately, as we probably know, there is a lot of stress all over the world. They're pushing us not to open the corridor again and to let them go back to the north, and not to move them again from one place to another. So we will not attack Rafiah. This is the decision of our leaders in the end of the day, and I hope that they will take the right decision.
Lieutenant Colonel Yaron Buskila, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for defending Israel and all of your amazing leadership. We look forward to having you back on our briefing again. And with that, we're going to go to our next guest. So thank you. So yesterday, we heard from Brigadier General Amir Avivi about the importance of settling the land of Israel and how that fits into the broader security of Israel. So we have a very special guest with us right now, Tirel Hacohen, who is the founder of the Kedma Youth Villages. Tirel, thank you so much for joining us, the student villages, I apologize. Please introduce yourself and explain to our viewers what Kedma is.
So, hello everyone. Yaron was talking about what's happening in Gaza, so we'll talk about the other side of the border, the communities that are right now evacuated, but what will be in the Gaza envelope in the time to come. So my name is Tirel Hacohen. I am a founder and president of Kedma. We strengthen border communities. We bring young adults to live and volunteer in communities that are on the borders of the state of Israel. There are 300 communities that are, when we look at all Israel borders, starting the Lebanon border, going through the Golan Heights and the Yehuda v'Shomron, Judea and Samaria, Jordan Valley, and of course the Gaza envelope and the Arava, the Jordanian border. So all those areas have small communities. We're talking about 30 to 100 families in every community. And in those communities, a lot of times there's issues of security, of course, and about demographics and educational challenges. And what Kedma does is think about the community resilience in those communities through our young adults that come and live in those areas. The war, the 7th of October, met us very harshly in the Nir Oz student village in Kibbutz Nir Oz. That was one of the kibbutzim that the terrorists attacked, unfortunately, the strongest, without any distractions from around 7 a.m. to around 3:30 p.m. They were doing as they wanted. A beautiful community, around 70 families. And our students that were there, of course, were part of those horrific events, and the village itself was burned down by Hamas terrorists. So unfortunately, we're inside the situation, and we also have a community in Kibbutz Sufa, which is also was invaded by terrorists. Just to give some. In Sufa, of course, not really only, but just in Nir Oz, if we had around 130 hostages and many dead, and most of the houses of the kibbutz got burned down. In Sufa, it was less. They had 3 people that fell, but it wasn't in the same. It didn't get as bad as it did in Nir Oz. In total, you can say that invading a community, going into the Yellow Gate, I know probably all of you have been in one of those communities. You have the Yellow Gate that puts you inside of a very safe space. Invading the safe space is something very dramatic in community's way of thinking about itself. And of course, recovery will take a lot of time. In just to give some proportions, in 75 years of the Israeli state, we only had 25 incidents in which a terrorist invaded a community, and only at the 7th of October we had in one day 22 communities that were invaded, meaning that community resilience, as we call it. Trying to think about how we can help those communities continue to exist after what they've been through is what we do these days. We also have villages on the northern border that were evacuated. Of course, they didn't suffer from the terror attack, so it's a different situation, but still they're evacuated for a very, very long time. And they don't know when they will come back home. We work in Metula, Misgava, Shtula, Adamit. All those are communities that are right now in the fighting. Houses inside of the communities are ruined. It's a war. It's completely the war there, and the communities do not know when they will come back. What else, Moshe?
If we could focus a little bit on this idea of community resilience, meaning after what has happened, how do you build resilience amongst all of these students?
Right. So of course, I'm not focused on only the students, but the communities themselves and the students as a way to address the community's needs. So when Daniel Aldrich is a professor in New York, which he is actually a Jewish with a black kippah guy. He's an international scholar in community resilience, and he studied Japan after the tsunami, and he studied 2 very similar communities, which had the whole technical things, how much the disaster hit them, how much damage was done, how big is the community, how its socioeconomical situation is. And he saw that one community survived and another did not. Survive means there's a new generation, it continues on thriving, they stayed as a community, the community continued, and others didn't. And he saw very interesting things. It was all about the ties that the community succeeded on creating between itself, with the governments and the other bodies that were trying to help, and with other communities. So when we talk about community resilience, at the end, it's all about the connections, all about the sense of community. So what we do now in Kedma is, let's take the Kibbutz Nir Oz as an example. Kibbutz Nir Oz was evacuated only in the 9th of October because there was still fighting going on for a few days, to Eilat. They've been in the hotel in Eilat ever since. You have to understand that the kibbutz community is still working, giving its all energy to the hostages situation. They had kids and women there. Now most of them came back. They still have a family that is kids and a whole family that is still in Gaza. We don't know, of course, what their situation is. And their whole energy is about the hostages situation. They have no energy left to think about the children, to think about the community events. They're still in the trauma. Our students continued the volunteering in Eilat. They went on the bus with the community, and just the continuance, thinking about resilience also to the individuals and also to the community, it's as a whole, is very, very important. Meaning the same kid or the same older person that got a tutor from a student that was tutoring him, and it continues now in Eilat, it means a lot. Of course, we also do community events and group meetings to those audiences, to kids, youth, and older people. Now, this week, Nir Oz community moved from Eilat to Kiryat Gat, and it's in southern Israel, but not very, very close to the border as they were. They were 2 kilometers from Gaza. Now, let's say they're 25 kilometers from Gaza. So what we do now is to try and continue our work wherever the community goes, with the goal, of course, to come back to the community itself when time comes.
Tirel, if you could just say again the name of that professor that you mentioned who did that.
Yeah. So it's Daniel Aldrich.
Daniel Aldrich. Wonderful. Now,
right? And he's a world-class community resilience professor, which studied a few very interesting study cases. And he advised me a little bit about how to work in Kedma and how to measure our work throughout the years.
Now, let me ask you a little bit of a different question. If we can zoom out for a minute, you work with students who are choosing to settle the land, to move to these development towns. In general, what do you find the interests are of these young Israelis? Do you find it's hard to identify such people? Or is there an overwhelming amount of the next generation, so to speak, who want to settle the land? Where are people's priorities right now?
In Kedma, we work with young adults from 18 to 35. So we work with gap year members, after army discharged soldiers, students, and young families. So we have it on all the ages of young adults in Israel. And I can say that the world of the young adults in Israel got very turned upside down during the last few months. Let's say the academic year was supposed to start a week after the 7th of October, and it only started 2 days ago at the end, a delay of almost 3 months, which made a lot of, there are 300,000 students in Israel, academic students, 100,000 of them are in Miluim right now, are recruited. So the 200,000 that were left without school. in a very weird time, like a window of time with nothing to do. There's a lot of discharge soldiers that IDF didn't recruit. I don't have the reasons. Maybe our first speaker can help with that. And so their world really, really changed. And we gave the opportunity for young adults to come and join the work. It wasn't easy. The 7th of October, we have villages in Judea and Samaria and in Jordan Valley in very, let's say, sensitive locations, security speaking. And it was not easy for the parents to send them. It was not obvious. And what we see, the generation is just amazing. It's a lot stronger than the leadership, unfortunately. And we can see that people come, people volunteer. We have just created these last 3 months 7 new groups. On top of our group, 7 new groups that help communities from the Gaza envelope. And we just had so many young adults come, and so many communities want us to come now that they understand that community resilience is what will make the difference for their communities in the times to come, in the future, in the very close future. So our model really expanded because we understand that right now is the time to act. And I really can say on a very optimistic note that we have an amazing young generation in Israel, very devoted.
That is so good to hear. With your permission, I'm going to share your email address with our viewers right now. So anyone who has follow-up questions, you can directly get in touch with Tirel. And the other day we heard that recruits to the IDF, the numbers are up because despite the war, or in spite of the war, the young generation wants to volunteer for the country, wants to be active. So it's amazing to hear the same thing is true with settling the land of Israel. You have any final parting words for our audience before we close out the briefing today?
I just want to say thank you for the hug we get from all over the world, because for me personally, it's been very significant. My husband is in the Lebanon border since the 7th of October. And as Kedma, we're in the citizen part of the war, and we can feel how we got closer as the Jewish nation. And for me, it gives me the strength to continue. So just to say thank you to you all, 409 people. It's just amazing numbers of people who care so much. So just a lot of appreciation for that hug.
Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, thank you to Lieutenant
Tirel
Buskila, who was with us earlier. Thank you to all of our viewers, all of our supporters. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time, for another briefing. We're going to do a deep dive with the head of our research here at IDSF, or Yisachar, tomorrow. So please stay tuned for that. Until then, stay safe, everyone. Stay strong. Take care.